Welcome back, everyone. I wanted to show you the next big project. It's going to be a little bit before I can actually get started on this one. It's fall now. I expect it'll probably be spring before I can get going with some of the bigger parts, but this is my 1976 Bronco, well, what's left of it. I bought this several years ago. I wanted a vehicle that was comparable to a Jeep. Yes, I know I'm going to get some flack from that, but I'm definitely a Jeep guy. Never been a Ford Bronco type person. But the problem with the Jeeps that I've found, I like having ragtops on them, and I like the ability to get out there in the open. The problem is, ragtops, as those of you who have run them are aware, have a tendency to be really noisy. Not to mention the fact that Jeeps like a CJ5 and my 2A that I've got in the garage are just not built for backseat passengers. Yes, I know there are more modern Jeeps out there, but as far as I'm concerned, if it was built after about, say, the mid-80s, it's no longer a functional off-road vehicle. So, I'm not going to get rid of this one. This one has all kinds of sentimental value for me, so I'll be keeping it. But I wanted something that could be more comfortable, could run with a hardtop easily, something I could actually put air conditioning in. If I want to drive without that, I can drive the Jeeps. And something that would be able to carry people in the back seat if I ever wanted to take someone with me. So I bought this. Got some nice fond childhood memories of a friend with an old Bronco, so I figured it'd be a great option to work with. If you happen to watch this video, you know who you are. So the benefit to this, it was in pretty good shape when I got it. At least the frame and axles were. The body was in terrible condition. It was rusted through in so many places I couldn't even rebuild it. So I stripped it down to this point, pulled the body off of it, pulled the drivetrain out of it. My plan was always to do a frame-off resto mod. So I'll be upgrading it with lockers, better engine, transmission, transfer case, building a new body for it, and upgrading range and comfort levels. So this is going to be a big project. I'll have to purchase things as I go. But my first step, plan for this one, going to be suspension. So I'm going to remove the frame from the control arms down there and disconnect the front springs and rear springs. We'll go ahead and pull the fuel tank out of there. There shouldn't be anything left in it. And remove the rest of the plumbing off the frame. Take off the steering gearbox, you can see up here. Basically strip it down to nothing but a frame. We'll take off the remaining body mounts that are stuck on there. I had to cut the ones off that you currently see missing, like this one down here. So we'll cut those loose and get this down to bare metal. I'm probably going to sandblast it, just make sure everything's nice and clean. Then, for the suspension, this is a stock suspension on this one right now. My intent is to upgrade to a 3.5-inch progressive suspension, so it'll still be a coil leaf combination like it has now, but I'll be adjusting that to handle the kind of extra weight that I'll be putting in this rig. So the things I'm going to do to it, and the things I need to do to start, the reason why I'm starting with suspension, I'm going to switch it out for a long arm conversion. So that'll take these control arms and put their mounting point about here, right about there. So quite a bit longer than what it has currently. Should make it a little bit smoother on the road, especially when it's bumpy or washboard. They also have 7 degrees of built-in caster angle on them, so that gives me a little bit of improved steering with the addition of this lift. Normally the problem Broncos have when you put 3 or 4 inches plus on them, they have a tendency to have a whole bunch of bump steer when you're driving down the road, and I don't want to have that. I'm also switching out for dual shocks all the way around, so you can see up here where the existing shock tower is. This will be removed. It's welded across the bottom here, and there should be a weld, there it is, back across the back of it up top. So I'm going to cut that loose and weld a new one in place. It's longer and wider, so it's designed to handle 2 shocks sitting side by side with a spacer between them. I know they do make shock hoops for this, but I do want to put a sway bar on the front with some removable links. So again, I want this to be comfortable to drive anytime on the road. I've driven the old Jeeps without sway bars, and yes, it's doable, but especially if there's anyone driving it who doesn't know how to handle that, they can get pretty squirrely on the road. So I will be using a sway bar on this one, but I want to be able to disconnect it for off-road use. So because of that, I can't really use the shock hoops. The front point where the hoop comes down is also the point where the sway bar attaches, so it gets in the way. I'd have to make some modifications to make that work. So I'm just going to put the shocks behind the spring and just set them side by side. The new arms are drilled for dual shocks sitting side by side down here, not just the single that you see on this one. So welding on new shock towers up front and new attachment points back here for the control arms. Also in the back, I'm going to be installing an anti-wrap center support on the rear axle. Now that one I can't actually install until the thing's sitting at ride height, so that means I need the drivetrain and I need the body on it before I can actually install that. But thankfully, I think I can do the majority of the work and potentially set the body on here temporarily when I build it, then pull it off of there so I can repaint that portion of the frame and get good welds on it. But that goal is to keep that rear axle from kicking the pinion up under power. So back here it's going to keep the leaf springs, but they'll be taller, progressive, and a little bit stiffer than these, I think. Again, my plan is to put some extra weight on the back of this. There will be a larger fuel tank in it. It's going to have a spare tire hanging off the back, a 35, as well as some extra gear. And I want to be able to keep people in the back seat, so a little bit stiffer spring pack to handle the extra weight. I'm also switching to dual shocks in the back, so you can see the primary shock mount back here. So the shock came off the back of the axle and came up to this position. I'm switching out for a longer travel dual shock system that should put the front mount right up here on the frame, so in front of the axle. And then running the shocks up, one will come from above and one will come from below, running side by side coming up in the front. So hopefully that combination will work well. The problem is back here, the majority of the landmarks that they use to tell you where to put this upper bracket are based on the body. And obviously I don't have one of those at the moment. So I'll have to take a really good look at some of the pictures and make sure that I can find what I'm looking for. But anyway, the reason for doing this portion first is because the suspension modifications require me to do some welding on the frame. And I can't think of a better time to do that than the condition it's in right now. Once I get a body on top of it, it's going to be a lot harder to get to. And I figure I want to get a good coating on this frame so I don't have to worry about it rusting anymore. And that would be nice to do once all that welding is finished. So step one, strip the frame, separate it from what's left of the drivetrain. Step two, prepare to put the necessary suspension modifications on it and make sure that I've got everything lined up. And step three will be to recoat the frame and get things reconnected as far as the bolts are concerned. I'm going to put it back on the rolling chassis, but I'm probably not going to torque everything down because obviously the axles will come off again when it comes time to rebuild them. So the rear axle is going to get new axle shafts, disc brakes, and a high pinion third member with a locker in it. The front, which is a Dana 44, is going to get a locker, disc brakes, and new axle shafts as well. My intent is to run 410 ring and pinion. Should give me a pretty good gear ratio. And I'll be using an NV4500 5-speed and an Atlas 2 for gearing to finish it out. Plan for the engine is a 351 Windsor with throttle body injection. I know I could go more modern than that with a multi-point, but honestly, the reason for it is sitting in here. So this is my Willys. This is a 46 CJ2A. It has a 3A's windshield frame on it, so if you see pictures of it from the front, it's going to have the wrong windshield frame, but I like the extra vent that that provides. My plan with this Jeep is to convert it to electric. So that's going to be another big project coming up soon. But driveline-wise, it's complete. It's ready to go. The engine's currently in here is a 289 Ford. So yes, I could just swap this engine directly into the Bronco, but I want something that's got a little more low-end torque than the 289 had. So plan for this vehicle, I'm going to pull that engine out of there, and the nice part is I've got throttle body injection on here. I've got brand new oil pan, pickup, oil pump, The distributor's new. So you got a lot of components on here that I can reuse on the 351 for the Bronco. So at such time that I'm ready to build that engine, I'll just strip parts off of here and reuse them. Makes it a little easier. That's the reason for the throttle body fuel injection, because that Jeep has throttle body on it. So, hopefully, starting in the next couple of months, you'll start seeing some of these videos for the Bronco. And at some point over the course of the next year, if I'm lucky, you'll see the electric conversion for the Jeep as well. So keep an eye out for upcoming projects, and I'll see you over the next horizon.